Hello. Let's share a little primer here, a little 101, a little more light. I'll share a little introductory by way of explanation, teaching talk. So the way that I like to, I guess we're a little wobbly. I just really took any time to get this ready, but what are we gonna do? Full night of class is about to begin. Anyway, I'm here at Somebody Farm. I'm Steve Watson. You probably knew that. The way that I like to think of this, like to teach it, like to share this issue, understanding, view, is that if I say your temple or your church or your mosque or holy center or whatever, you have a vision in your mind of that place, your guru's cave, whatever it might be, and you feel, know, act, expect that place to be different than ordinary places, than mundane places, than the jewelry store, the grocery store, the cobbler, the office building, the town hall, whatever it might be. That's a different place. And usually it looks like it. Decorations, the colors, the grandeur, the architecture, the materials used, the signage, I guess. But that physical place is not the place that you are responding differently to. That is the place where your different responding occurs most often, maybe only. So for example, when you go to temple, when you go to mosque, when you go to church, some other special, rare, sacred place. So it could be secular. I'm sure it would be the same thing if you go into a courthouse. Imagine going into the district court or the state superior court or the Supreme Court or something like that, the world court. You're going to behave differently in there than when you go into your insurance office. And not just behave, you might dress differently. So you might get dressed in the morning differently. You might select the special shoes. You might clean your shoes before you go. You might make sure your shirt is tucked in and there's no breakfast stains on it before you go in. You might comb your hair. You might buy a new hat or get a haircut before you go. You'd certainly be hygienic. And when you approach or enter, you might take off your hat, you might take off your shoes, you might wash your feet, you might wash your hands, you might douse yourself with holy water, you might bow, you might say a prayer, you might take a gesture or a mudra, you might make some physical adjustments to your being at the threshold where we mark the change from mundane to sacred, from usual to holy, to ordinary, from ordinary to the sanctified. So, when we go to these places, which are usually less usual than our usual, right? So they're a little extraordinary, they're a little different, they're a little less common for most of us. You may go to the mosque once a week. You may go to your temple every once in a while. You may go to your church on holidays. Whereas you go to the gas station, you go to your house, you go to your work all the time regularly, and you probably don't think too much of it. So the physical place is not the place that you are showing the courtesy and respect and consideration to. That you're not consciously entering the physical space, although you are entering the physical space. Rather, the physical space is a placeholder, a marker, a vessel, a temporary vessel for this idea that we will interact with and behave differently in this space. Usually the physical place, has markers to help remind us of our social contract, our presumed understanding and involvement in the contract. So the signage is different, the architecture, the colors, the materials are different. There may be something for you to do, like a place for your hat or to wash part of your body or something like that. There might be a reminder that your head should be covered here, or your shoes should come off here, something like that. When you go inside thinking about the court, they might have powdered wigs on, or sit on a dais a little bit elevated, and have somebody announce who comes in, and a bailiff and so forth. There's a lot of generally indications that, oh, I'm in a different place, and these are to remind me of this contract that I'm a part of. Right? Because the police officer is just your neighbor, but the hat and the badge the uniform reminds you, oh right, we've all decided to treat this person differently. They have a different role in society. And the same goes for the rabbi, the preacher, the holy nun, or the judge, whatever it might be. So the idea here is that when that physical place is lost in an earthquake or burns down, or something terrible like that, and we'll assume nobody is inside. It's not a horror story. It's just a grave inconvenience and an insurance hit and a problem. We all know immediately that the members of that community, of that mosque, of that temple, of that church, of that, the court or whatever, they're going to be in the trade school next week because they have a spare auditorium. They're going to be in the middle school because they have a spare cafeteria. They're going to be in the hotel ballroom because it's available and they can make use of that. They're going to be meeting at the pastor's house because it's summer and they can be outside and they have a yard. The community will find a way to come together without those architectures, without those outward signs that this is different. Right? So they'll be meeting in the firehouse, maybe for a year while they rebuild the church, right? And so that's an opportunity, that view, that story is an opportunity for us to remember that it was never the church building. It was never the mosque structure. It was never the temple architecture. It was never the edifice of the courthouse to which we were responding differently to. Those things held the space of the response, and they held reminders of us of our contract to behave, to view, to interact with differently that space. And I don't just mean geometric space, but an energetic space, a psychic space, a shared intellectual space. And so when this place burns down, or earthquake, or whatever it might be, we all have an opportunity to remember that, it was never that physical place, because here I am, bowing my head when I come in, tucking my shirt in before I get there, wearing my nice shoes, maybe speaking more quietly when I'm there, maybe holding off on some of the jokiness that I usually have as part of my personality, maybe not opting for that shirt with the kind of iffy, but funny, but that iffy kind of joke on it. Certainly not being profane when I'm in that space. Because it is the devotion to those behaviors, those changed from the mundane behaviors, that make the space anything. It is our collective adherence to, devotion to, and insistence upon those behaviors that make the space anything other than ordinary. And that space is carried in some kind of architecture that has some sort of accoutrements that help us remind us of that contract. In other words, if everybody stopped tucking in their shirts and holding their tongue when they have an off-color joke, and washing their hair before they go, and taking their shoes off when they go in, that space would stop being that space. So, you may have noticed, you may not have noticed, that in my space, this studio space, in my school, which is beyond the walls of this space, it's this property, I don't swear in the class. And I don't smile upon swearing in the class, because I am making a conscious effort to sanctify the space, to make this space something other than it was built to be a garage, I think, this physical building. And I'm endeavoring to make it something other than that. And for me, I bow when I come in, I take my shoes off, I wouldn't wear an off-color shirt in here, I'm not going to lose my temper in here, I'm not going to raise my voice without thoughtfully choosing to do so, I'm not going to swear in here, and I don't want other people doing that either. So you'll notice that if somebody swears, I interject, no, thank you, it's not a moral judgment. It's a reminder that I want us to collectively be making a devoted and concentrated effort to help the space become something different than the ordinary. This is not an insurance company. This is not the local branch of the bank. This is not the bakery down the street. This is not the bicycle repair shop. This is not your home. This is something a little different. Not better, certainly not morally superior, right? Now for me, I just kind of, anything I wouldn't say to a 5-year-old, I'm not going to say here. But that also means I don't want you to say things like an abbreviation of the swear, so that we all know what you meant. Because even though you've kind of cleverly avoided saying the profane word, you've thought it, you've spent time with it enough to think of an alternate way to get the point so everybody knows, and you still get the laugh or the knowing nod or whatever. But you've still brought that feeling, that energy into mind, and then shared it with others who now have it in their mind. And to me, that's just as profane as saying the profanity, right? So, I wouldn't use even what you might consider a gentler version of the profane word in here. Words, I find and believe to be very important, right? And they have power, they have meaning, and they're necessary to us functioning as a communal organism, as a communal organization, as a communal being, as I called it, homo communalensis. So, the term that I have up here used, that's the name of the school here in Chinese. Jean Chanier did that. And the last character is the character I use for the studio or for school. And it etymologically shares a root with the term used for church. And that's purposely chosen use here. So I will say, by way of exception, probably once a year I will swear during a class, usually where I think it will have the most power, most effect, some of it being surprise, because I am consciously deciding to make a very important point that I think needs making, often something around somebody's safety. And I'll try and perform it so that people feel like it's arriving, emotionally carried and surprising even myself, but that's not the case. So it isn't that I'm sort of recklessly rigorous and unavailable to change. So for me, it isn't just here are the rules, never break them. Like, I understand what they're for, and I devote myself to them, and I encourage maybe even discipline my students to adhere to them as well. But I will break them very occasionally, right? I don't want it to become a thing. So if you're in class and you notice me, no, we're not saying that, now you have an idea why. Similarly, We don't talk politics here, but that'd be another video, and you could probably surmise some of the reasons. So if you have any thoughts on this, please type them in the comments. I'll try and get this saved and posted. But this is something that I should check now, but I'm pretty sure it's on my sort of etiquette. So if you do private lessons, every time you get an email, you'll have an attachment with the etiquette. And this should be on there. If not, I hadn't thought of it for whatever reason. And if you're interested in hearing about why and how I bow, I'll make a video about that sometime. If you're interested in hearing about the politics thing, I'll make a video about that sometime. But I have classes to teach here in a minute, so thank you all very much.